They clocked her at 250 miles per hour. In a quarter-mile strip of concrete in suburban Montreal, Shirley Muldowney was doing what she did better than almost anyone on Earth, piloting a top-fuel dragster at speeds most people would never experience in an airplane. It was Friday, June 29, 1984. The qualifying run for the NHRA Grand Nationals at Sanair Raceway should have been routine. Another day at the office for a three-time world champion. But fate had something else in mind. Within seconds, an inner tube would come loose from her front wheel. Her dragster would lock hard to the left, and Shirley Muldowney would spend the next 18 months learning whether the will to survive could overcome catastrophic injuries that should have killed her. This is the story of a woman who shattered the gender barrier in America's fastest sport. This is the story of the driver they called the First Lady of drag racing. And this is the story of how a 250-mile-per-hour crash nearly killed her, and how she came back anyway. Shirley Ann Roque was born in Burlington, Vermont, on June 19, 1940. She grew up in Schenectady, New York, during an era when girls were expected to be homemakers, nurses, or teachers. Shirley wanted to drive fast. At the age of 16, she married Jack Muldowney, a local mechanic who shared her passion. He built her first dragster. She would drive it. And by the 1950s, Shirley Muldowney was street racing at 120 miles per hour past Nick's Diner, outrunning police cruisers and discovering the only thing that made her feel truly alive. School had no appeal. Racing was everything. "I wanted to race up and down the streets in a hot rod," she would later recall. "It was what I did best." In 1958, at 18 years old, Shirley made her official debut on the drag strip at Fonda Speedway. She was shy, quiet, and incredibly fast. Throughout the 1960s, she competed in various classes: top gas, superstock, funny car, working her way up the ranks in a sport that had little place for women. Promoters wanted to market her looks along with her speed. They dressed her in go-go boots and hot pants before she climbed into her race suit, trying to prove that you could be both beautiful and competitive. Shirley tolerated it. She was too focused on proving one thing, that a woman could beat men at their own game. In 1965, Shirley Muldowney became the first woman licensed by the NHRA to drive in top gas. For 7 years, she worked mostly in anonymity, winning small races and regional events. Her marriage to Jack, though supportive early on, began to unravel as she devoted more time to racing. Jack wasn't interested in the world of nitromethane fuel and full-time professional drag racing. They divorced in 1972, but remained friends. Shirley had a son, John, who would grow up surrounded by the smell of fuel and the roar of supercharged engines, eventually working on his mother's crew. It was Connie Kalitta who changed everything. Kalitta was already a legend in drag racing, a man with the swagger and skill to match. When he and Shirley began racing funny cars together in match races across the country, he was the bounty hunter, she was the bounty huntress. Something electric happened. They were fast, they were marketable, and they pushed each other harder with every pass. Their relationship was romantic and turbulent, lasting 7 years. In 1972, during a race at Dragway 42 in Ohio, Shirley's Mustang caught fire after a motor explosion. She was pulled from the burning car with singed eyelids, seared eyes, and her helmet still aflame. She survived. She would race again. By 1973, Shirley was ready for the top category, top fuel. But the NHRA didn't license women for nitro racing. The sport had never seen a woman behind the wheel of a dragster at those speeds. The men didn't want her there. The association worried about liability. Yet 3 legendary names stepped forward to sign her application: Don Garlitz, the inventor of the rear-engine dragster and the king of the sport; Tommy Ivo, the legendary funny car pilot; and Connie Kalitta. On their signatures alone, Shirley Muldowney became the first woman ever licensed to drive top fuel. She was 33 years old. For the next 4 years, she learned the sport from the ground up. Every run was a battle against both her competitors and the men who resented her presence. She raced Pancho Rendon's dragster initially, then formed a racing partnership with Connie Kalitta that would define the 1970s. They would pull up side by side at quarter-mile strips across America, and more often than not, the woman in the bounty huntress Mustang was the one faster off the line. The crowds couldn't believe what they were seeing. A woman racing nitromethane-fueled dragons. A woman winning. By 1976, Shirley was ready to win at the national level. In Columbus, Ohio, she dominated the top fuel competition like no one had seen before. She qualified number 1, not by much, but by 0.05 seconds, setting the low elapsed time and top speed of the entire meet. Round after round, she had the best times. In the final, she broke her own top speed record and won the event. That victory sparked a 3-year run of unparalleled dominance. In 1977, Shirley Muldowney won the NHRA Winston World Points Championship. She was the first woman ever to claim drag racing's most prestigious title. The achievement was so historic, so groundbreaking, that the U.S. House of Representatives voted her an Outstanding Achievement Award. She appeared on the cover of racing publications. She was interviewed on national television. The girl from Vermont, who had wanted to race past Nick's Diner, was now the most famous drag racer in America. She won again in 1980, and again in 1982. Shirley Muldowney had won 3 Top Fuel World Championships. In the entire history of drag racing, only one man, Don Garlits himself, had won more than 2. She had done what no one thought possible. She had become not just the best female driver, but one of the best drivers, period, regardless of gender. The NHRA ranked her 5th on its list of the top 50 drivers of all time. Kids wore t-shirts with her face on them. She got recognized at airports. Shirley Muldowney wasn't just breaking barriers anymore, she was breaking records. But success in Top Fuel came with a cost. Drivers were pushing their machines to the absolute edge of what was physically possible. Engines were making over 4,000 horsepower. Cars were exceeding 280 miles per hour with regularity. The sport had advanced so quickly that the engineering couldn't always keep up with the performance. In 1984, the NHRA saw multiple serious incidents. A driver named Daryl Gwynn suffered a career-ending accident. At the same event where Shirley would crash, fellow driver Lynn St. James Kerhulis also suffered a severe wreck. The sport was pushing its limits, and the limits were pushing back. By 1984, Shirley was 44 years old and still competitive at the highest level of drag racing. She had been racing professionally for over 20 years. She had won more than most drivers would ever dream of winning. She had proved everything she needed to prove. But she wasn't done. There was still more speed to find, still more records to break. June 29, 1984. The NHRA Grand Nationals at Sanair Raceway, 30 kilometers north of Montreal. The facility had been hosting drag races since 1970. It was a destination for the sport, a place where the fastest drivers on Earth came to test themselves. Shirley was there to qualify for Sunday's final rounds. The weather was good. The track conditions were excellent. She was ready. The qualifying run began like thousands before it. The Christmas tree lit up. Green light. Shirley strapped herself into the cockpit of her dragster, hit the throttle, and accelerated into the acceleration chambers of nitromethane fuel and raw horsepower. The car launched with the force of a rocket. 0 to 100 miles per hour in less than a second. The centripetal force was crushing. The engine was screaming. For 1,000 feet, the dragster was a straight line of pure velocity. But at the 1,000-foot mark, as Shirley was managing the power and beginning to deploy her parachutes to slow down, something catastrophic happened. The inner tube came loose from her left front wheel. In top fuel dragsters of that era, the tires used inner tubes. This particular tube didn't just deflate. It twisted around the suspension spindle, locking the wheel completely. The moment the wheel locked, all the forward momentum of the dragster twisted violently to the left. 2.5 tons of aluminum, fuel, and machinery, moving at 250 miles per hour, suddenly turning hard to port with no warning. Shirley's hands wrenched on the steering wheel, but there was no controlling it now. The physics were too powerful. The car left the track. It spun, It tumbled. It disintegrated against the dirt embankment at the edge of the shutoff area, pieces of the dragster scattering across 600 feet of earth, debris, and oil. When the safety safari rushed to the crash scene, they couldn't immediately find Shirley. The car was in pieces. The cockpit was destroyed. They looked for her in the wreckage, calling out her name. A spectator spotted her several hundred feet away from the main destruction, covered in blood, mud, and oil, half buried in the dirt. She was alive, but barely. Her pelvis was crushed. Both legs were shattered in multiple places. Her hands were broken, and 3 of her fingers were snapped. The injuries were catastrophic, the kind of injuries that normally meant permanent disability or death. The Montreal General Hospital received her that evening. Surgeons worked for 6 hours just to clean the dirt, oil, and debris from her skin before they could even begin the first operation. The cleaning alone took wire brushes and hours of painstaking work. Then came the surgeries, and the surgeries, and the surgeries. Shirley underwent a total of 17 different operations over the following months. Each one was a battle. Each one carried risk, but each one was necessary to save her life and her limbs. For over 5 months, Shirley remained in the hospital. The pain was constant. It was relentless. Doctors warned her that she might lose her left leg. If they couldn't repair the damage, amputation might be necessary. She spent her days in recovery, her nights in pain, staring at the ceiling and wondering if she would ever drive again. She wondered if she would ever walk again. But something remarkable happened during those 5 months. Shirley Muldowney received over 4,700 get-well letters and cards. Fans from across North America wrote to her. Other racers wrote to her. Men she had beaten in competition wrote to her. Don Garlitz, who had signed her license and who had been her rival for decades, sent a personal message of support and offered financial assistance. The drag racing community, male and female, rallied around her. She was no longer a competitor. She was a symbol. She was proof that the sport could be dangerous, that it could break you, and that what mattered was not whether you were a man or a woman, but whether you had the courage to climb back into the cockpit. Shirley handwrote replies to nearly every letter. In her hospital bed, with broken hands, she wrote back. She thanked people for their support. She told them she was going to race again. She told them she wasn't done. And she meant it. 18 months of rehabilitation followed. Physical therapy became her second full-time job. Her right leg was now slightly shorter than her left, a permanent consequence of the injuries. She had to give away 60 pairs of high heels, her greatest passion, because she could no longer wear them comfortably. She learned to walk again. The ankle was fused permanently. She would walk with a limp for the rest of her life. But she could walk. That was what mattered. The accident forced changes in drag racing as well. After Shirley's crash, chassis builders developed new protective tubs designed to protect drivers better in violent accidents. The drag racing community moved away from tire designs that used inner tubes, implementing improved front tire technology rated for speeds up to 320 miles per hour, making the failures that had happened to Shirley less likely to happen again. Her crash, horrible as it was, made the sport safer for everyone who came after. By early 1986, Shirley Muldowney was ready. In January, just before her 46th birthday, she strapped into a new dragster, a state-of-the-art machine built by Al Swindoll, and headed to Firebird Raceway outside Phoenix, Arizona. It was her first national event back since the crash. The press conference before the race was emotional. Reporters asked her why she was returning. Why risk it again? Why come back to a sport that had nearly killed her? Shirley's answer was simple and profound. "A lot of reasons," she said. "I missed my friends. I missed my job. I missed the lifestyle. I needed the money. It was what I did best." In her very first pass at Pomona in the Winter Nationals that season, Shirley ran 5.47 seconds, the quickest run of her career at that moment. She qualified in the number 2 position. The crowd went wild. She had done it. She was back. More importantly, she had proved that Shirley Muldowney was not done. But the comeback wasn't easy. For the next 3 years, she struggled to recapture the dominance of her earlier career. The injuries had taken their toll. The younger drivers were hungry, the cars were faster. She qualified for races, but she didn't win. From 1986 to 1989, Shirley didn't have a single national event victory. It was a dry spell that would test her resolve. Some people wondered if she was just wasting her time, if the comeback would fade into bittersweet nostalgia rather than triumph. Then came October 1989. The NHRA Fall Nationals at Firebird Raceway in Phoenix, the same track where she had tested herself in 1986. At 49 years old, with a fused ankle that never stopped hurting, Shirley Muldowney qualified number 1 for the top fuel category. She ran 5.038 seconds. She had the top speed of the event at 292.04 miles per hour. Round after round, she was faster. In the semifinals, she faced Joe Amato, the defending world champion, a legendary name in drag racing. She beat him off the line. In the final round, she faced Daryl Gwynn, one of the most talented drivers of the era. Again, she was better off the line. She won. Her first national event victory since 1983. Her 18th career NHRA national event win. Her last, as it would turn out. When she climbed out of the cockpit and saw Daryl Gwynn, expecting tension or disappointment, she instead saw a huge smile. Gwynn came over to her and said, "Shirley, you welded me." He was genuinely happy to see her win. That sportsmanship, that respect, meant more to Shirley than the trophy itself. She continued to race through the 1990s and early 2000s. She didn't have major sponsorship. She worked with what she had. But she kept setting records. In 1997, she set an IHRA national speed record of 303.71 miles per hour. In 2003, at age 63, she clocked her personal best elapsed time of 4.579 seconds at 327.66 miles per hour at a national event in Chicago. Then, in September of 2003, she announced that 2003 would be her final season. At the end of the year, she retired from active competition. She had raced for over 40 years. Today, Shirley Muldowney is 78 years old. She has been inducted into the Motorsports Hall of Fame of America. She was inducted into the Michigan Motorsports Hall of Fame. She was inducted into the International Motorsports Hall of Fame. In 2001, the NHRA named her the 5th greatest driver in the history of the sport. In 2024, she became the first female racer inducted into Bristol Dragway's Legends of Thunder Valley. More importantly, she changed the sport forever. Because of Shirley Muldowney, women have never again been denied the opportunity to compete in drag racing at the highest levels. Erica Enders, Angel Sampi, Alexis DeJoria, the Force Sisters, all of these modern champions stand on the foundation that Shirley built. Because of Shirley Muldowney, drag racing became the most gender-equal motorsport in the world. NASCAR didn't have women competing regularly at the national level in the 1970s and 1980s. Formula One didn't. But drag racing had Shirley Muldowney, and she won championships. The 250-mile-per-hour crash at Montreal didn't kill Shirley Muldowney. It didn't even stop her. What it did was define who she was, not as a female driver, not as a trailblazer, not as a victim of a terrible accident, but as a racer. A woman who loved the sport more than she feared the risks. A woman who came back from injuries that should have ended not just her career, but her life. A woman who proved that the will to survive, the determination to continue, and the love of what you do are more powerful than any obstacle, any injury, any doubt. They called her the First Lady of Drag Racing. But Shirley Muldowney never acted like a queen. She acted like a driver. And in the end, that's all that mattered.